You were not born confused. That came later. You came into the world with instincts, raw, unfiltered, ancient. And for a while, you followed them. You ran, shouted, tested limits. You touched things just to feel them. You stared too long. You fought over small things and wept over big ones. But then, the slow cutting began. Be nice, sit still, don't cry, don't shout, don't scare anyone. Bit by bit, your edges were filed down. You became polite, acceptable, quiet. You learned that some parts of you were dangerous, others useless. You were told that becoming a man meant trimming yourself to fit a mold. You watched your father do it, or your uncle, or the man on TV, folding himself into a narrow corridor of what was allowed. And now here you are, a grown body housing a soul that was never fully welcomed into the world. Robert Bly, poet, prophet, fire starter, saw this coming. He called it the softening of men, not a gentleness born of choice, but a neutering, a quiet cultural surgery, not to make men better, but to make them easier to manage. What happens, he asked, when a boy is not initiated by wild men, but by institutions? When the wildness is not harnessed, but medicated? When the sacred masculine is not taught, but feared? You get what we see now, a generation of men floating in ambiguity, not evil, not broken, but lost, deeply, painfully lost, because they were never handed the map, never told the truth that masculinity is not toxic, but its distortion is, that aggression is not evil, but its suppression can become so, that feeling too much doesn't make you weak, but burying your feelings makes you dangerous.
Bly spoke often of initiation, not the fake kind, the college frat hazing, the adolescent dares, but the ancient sacred kind, the one where a boy is pulled away from the mothering world and thrown into the forest with men who have walked through fire. Men who are not afraid of their own darkness, men who can hold both a weapon and a wound. Because without that rite of passage, the boy never dies. He grows taller, but not deeper. His muscles form, but his heart does not. He seeks power, but lacks direction. He becomes angry, but cannot say why. And so, he looks for initiation wherever he can find it, through danger, through porn, through cruelty, through control. Not because he is evil, because he is starving. This is what Bly feared most. Not that men would become monsters, but that they would become ghosts, haunting their own lives, detached, confused, longing, angry, addicted, numb, and still performing masculinity like a bad actor in the wrong role. We gave boys tools to fix cars, but not to fix themselves. We taught them how to win, but not how to mourn. We told them to be leaders, but never showed them how to follow their own soul. So now they are everywhere, men in suits, in gyms, in war zones, in churches, carrying a grief they can't name, a silence that doesn't feel noble, a question they're too ashamed to ask. What does it even mean to be a man?
But here's where it gets darker. Because the world doesn't just forget to answer that question, it punishes you for asking it. If you search too deeply, you're labeled a threat. If you act too boldly, you're called dangerous. If you cry, you're called fragile. If you don't cry, you're accused of being cold. The truth is, the world doesn't really want you to be a man. It wants you to be predictable, manageable, entertaining, harmless. Something in between, just enough edge to be exciting, but never enough to be sovereign. Never enough to truly awaken. Because a man who has been initiated, who knows his power and his pain, is dangerous in a very different way. Not to women, not to society, but to the systems that benefit from your silence. The marketplace cannot sell you peace if you find it inside yourself. Politics cannot manipulate you if you're grounded in something older than outrage. Social media cannot addict you if your attention has been reclaimed by the soul. That's the man Bly was calling forth. Not a brute, not a saint, but a full being. A man of ash and blood and music. A man who has cried in the forest, screamed at the sky, danced barefoot, sat in silence for hours without needing to speak. A man who carries grief in one hand and discipline in the other, who will not hurt lightly, but also will not apologize for existing. A man who does not seek applause, only truth.
So you ask yourself now, how do I become that man? Not the actor, not the shell, but the real thing. And the answer isn't easy, but it is simple. You must begin the descent, the journey inward, and not the polished, Instagrammed version of healing, but the raw, brutal, blood and bone reckoning with everything you've disowned. Your father's shadow that lives in your temper, your mother's wound that clings to your relationships, the boy inside who still waits for someone to tell him, "You've done enough, you can rest now." The descent is not glamorous. It will not earn you applause. No one will throw you a party for it, but it is the only path to wholeness. Robert Bly spoke of the long bag we dragged behind us, a sack full of everything we had to hide to be accepted. Our rage, our longing, our tenderness, our wildness, our tears. Every time we were told, "Don't be that," we shoved a piece of ourselves into the bag. And now it drags behind you, heavy and leaking. And you are tired, though you don't know why, because you were never meant to carry that weight alone. You were meant to open it, to hold it in your hands, to weep over it, to bring it back into your body. That is what real integration looks like. Not perfection, but retrieval. Not improvement, but return. And yet, no one tells you this, because an integrated man is unpredictable, and we fear what we cannot categorize. Society has no place for the man who is both warrior and healer, both fierce and gentle. We prefer extremes, the soft man who apologizes for his existence, or the hardened one who dominates everything around him. But both are distortions, reflections of an uninitiated masculine. One learned to fear his power. The other learned to fear his heart. The man Bly invites us to become fears neither. He has walked into the forest and met himself. He has seen what he is capable of in destruction and in devotion, and he has chosen to own it all.
You do not reach this through theory. You do not read your way into it. You must live it. You must lose things. You must fail in ways that tear your ego apart. You must be betrayed and somehow choose not to close. You must break, not once, but often, and let the breaking make you deeper. Only then does something ancient begin to rise within you, a solidity that doesn't come from arrogance, but from alignment. You stop needing to prove anything. You stop needing to win arguments. You stop performing, because now you know, truly know, that nothing you build outside can replace the silence you've made peace with inside. But this journey is not solitary. It's just lonely at first. What Robert Bly emphasized, what most modern men have forgotten, is that masculine initiation is communal. It takes other men, men who have already burned, already wept, already buried their egos in the dirt, and come back with clean hands. Not perfect men, but honest ones. The kind who don't flinch at your darkness, the kind who don't posture, the kind who say little but mean everything they say. These men exist, but they do not advertise. They are found in quiet corners, in slow conversations, in shared silences. You will recognize them by the way you breathe easier around them. And if you are lucky enough to find even one, stay close. Let yourself be witnessed. Let yourself be challenged. Let yourself be known. Because in this knowing, something shifts. The man you've been pretending to be starts to fall away. And the real one, the rooted one, begins to emerge. Not a product, not a brand, but a presence. Something firm, still and deeply human. And then, only then, you understand what Bly meant when he said, the wild man does not want to destroy civilization. He wants to redeem it, to restore it, to bring it back into balance, not with ideology, but with embodiment, with presence, with initiation. And perhaps now you begin to see the truth behind the title. The world doesn't want you to be a man, because the real kind of man, the kind who has met himself, is hard to sell things to, hard to frighten, hard to manipulate. He moves slowly, but when he moves, things shift. He speaks rarely, but when he does, it lands. He is not loud, but he is unignorable. And, most threatening of all, he does not need permission to be who he is.
But even once you begin to walk this path, once the mask is lifted, the descent begun, the bag of shadows finally opened, there remains a final task, choosing to stay in it. Not for a moment, not for a phase, but as a way of being. Because initiation is not a one-time event, it is a life. A man can be initiated once, yes, but to remain awake in a sleeping world, that is the real trial. And the temptations to return are constant, to numb yourself, to shrink again, to go back to being easy, predictable, pleasant. There is comfort in that sleep. You will crave it, especially when the cost of awareness becomes clear. You can no longer lie to yourself. You can no longer pretend that your job fulfills you, that your relationship doesn't hurt, that your soul can live on crumbs. The awakened man sees through everything, including his own patterns. And this seeing is not always pleasant, but it is holy. Robert Bly never told us that awakening would be easy. He told us that it would be real, that it would be painful, yes, but also liberating in a way that nothing else is. Because once you are initiated into your own being, into your full complexity, the world can no longer offer you false definitions of manhood and expect you to comply. You are no longer seduced by shiny titles or hollow power or the frantic performances of masculinity that fill our screens and schools. You no longer look to the culture to tell you who you are. You look inward. You look downward into your roots, into your grief, into your body. And from there, from the ground of being, you rise. But do not expect applause. The world resists the initiated man, not because he is wrong, but because he reminds everyone else of what they've avoided. His presence agitates the unexamined. His calm makes the anxious suspicious. His refusal to conform is not seen as freedom, but as threat. And yet, he does not flinch, because he knows this tension. He's lived in it. He's walked through his own fire, and now the flames of the world do not burn the same way. They may still scorch, but they no longer define him. And that difference, that sovereignty, is what makes him powerful.
Power, as Bly saw it, was never about control. It was about presence. The kind of presence that doesn't need to raise its voice to be heard. The kind that doesn't need to conquer to feel strong. The kind that has made peace with the wild animal in the basement of the soul, and instead of chaining it, has chosen to walk beside it. That is the man who cannot be bought, who cannot be silenced, who cannot be seduced by false belonging. He may live quietly. He may not have followers or fans, but where he walks, things grow. Where he speaks, things shift. And when he loves, it is with a depth that heals. The tragedy is not that we lack men like this. The tragedy is that we train them out of existence. We shame them into silence. We distract them from their journey. We mock their vulnerability, then fear their anger when it erupts from decades of suppression. And so the cycle continues. Uninitiated boys trapped in the bodies of grown men acting out their pain on the world around them. Bly didn't write poems for fame. He wrote them as invitations, maps, warnings, reminders that the real work is inward, that the treasure is buried beneath the very crown we've been taught to avoid. So now, the question is no longer, what does it mean to be a man? You already know the answer. You've always known.
The real question is, will you stop running from it? Will you let the full self fall away? Will you let yourself grieve the years spent pretending? Will you become the man who is not easily defined, but deeply felt? Because the world may not want you to be a man, but it desperately needs you to be one. Not the hollow statue, not the fragile tyrant, the whole man, the grounded man, the man who has bled and risen and chosen still to remain open. If you felt something awaken inside you, don't silence it this time. Let it rise, let it burn, let it guide you back to your own soul. And if you must walk alone for a while, so be it. You are not lost. You are simply walking a path that very few have the courage to take.